The heat was a killer that night. It was sultry and heavy, and it hung on me like an uncomfortable coat as I stood at the hotel bar and ordered my drink. The place was busy, too, heaving with sweaty people, and I knew by the end of the night sweat would be oozing from my body faster than I could pour beer into it, and I was planning on having a lot of beer. It would ensure that the evening passed happily in an alcoholic haze. Family gatherings just weren't my thing, and my family happened to be a bunch of dysfunctional freaks. I was the only sane one out of them. My mother was a gluttonous food addict, my father was a drunk, and as for my two sisters, well, they have 9 children between them, 10 if you count the baby with Down syndrome, all with different men. More freaks for a freaky, worthless family. Anyway, I'm digressing a little because the point of this story is the man. A quiet and unassuming man. I saw him when I was playing pool with my brother Larry. Larry was beating me, a smirk on his sweaty, fat face. I hated Larry as much as I hate stepping in dog shit. He had a fat, plastic-faced wife and 3 fat, spoiled kids. The reason for the family party was because of him. It was his 40th birthday and he had already drunk at least twice his body weight. Well, Ricky, mate, I think it's fair to say I'm whipping your thin, bony ass. Aha, snickered you. Fuck me, let's see you get out of that. Larry's laugh had almost made my ears bleed, and it took all of my willpower not to break the pool cue over his greasy head. I'd smiled at him and lined up my cue for the shot, knowing that I would probably miss and knowing that I would have to endure Larry's irritating laugh and smug comments. It was as I bent with the cue and gazed at the ball that my line of sight fell on the man. He was sitting in an easy chair, and my first impression of him was of stillness, of quietness, of solitude. Even though it was a busy, noisy bar, I paused before I took the shot, absorbing the man's appearance in that 5 seconds before I hit the ball. He was slim, with dark, longish hair and intense hooded eyes, framed with glasses. That's what I'd seen before the white ball hit the red and bounced off the green baize and onto the floor. Larry's laugh had echoed off the cream walls and into my skull. I grinned at him, my face feeling tight and skull-like. In my mind, I had rammed the pool cue into his wet, flaccid mouth. Now, at the bar, I ordered 1 more beer and stared at the barmaid's nipples through her white satin blouse. I was beginning to feel pleasantly warm and merry, even so that even when my sister stood next to me and breathed cider fumes all over me, I didn't feel my normal urge to wring her scraggy neck. "Lend us a tenner, Rick? I'm really skint this week. I'll pay you back out of my child's benefit next week." I pulled a tenner out of my wallet and threw it on the bar, then wiped my hands on my jeans. "Knock yourself out," I mumbled. She grinned, revealing crooked lip-stained teeth. "Cheers, bruv." I watched as she leant across the bar and tried to attract the attention of the other barmaid. Her top had ridden up, exposing her lily-white, stretch-marked, streaked skin. Disgusting, I thought, but so were most of the women in this downtown hotel. It wasn't exactly the Ritz with its worn carpets and scruffy easy chairs. It was a place that brought to mind sex-hungry, cheap-suited businessmen and mini-clad, corned-beef-legged women who wanted to top up their benefits. It was the same place I had had my wedding reception 3 years ago and had quick and pointless sex with my wife, Maisie, in one of the rooms upstairs. I glanced down at myself. At least I wasn't wearing a damn suit, I thought. After I paid for my drink, I carried it back to the pool table and sat in the corner. I wiped my hands on my jeans, casting the quiet man discreet looks, and there I sat for a while, nursing my pint, trying to ignore my family. I studied the man, his stillness, his mask-like face, his poise. If he felt me looking at him, he didn't reveal it, but just continued to gaze at a painting on the wall opposite him. A sorrowful portrait of a woman in a red dress with a red scarf across her throat. He gazed at her, and I gazed at him. An hour passed, and I continued to sit there and stare at him, but when the man eventually moved, it was as if something monumental had occurred. My heart beat faster, and my mouth turned dry. The man didn't look at me, but he turned fluidly, almost gracefully, and made his way up the stairs near where he had been sitting. I guessed that he had had a room booked here. I placed my pint on the table next to me, then stood up and followed him up the stairs. He barely made a noise as he climbed, as if he were a drifting ghost. At the top, on the landing, he turned left and moved past several closed doors, one hand in his pocket, fingers curling for a door key. I heard it jangle as it hit loose change. He pulled it out and stopped in front of room 6. I stopped too, leaning back slightly in the shadows of the large rubber plant. I watched as he slid the key in the lock and opened the door. He moved into the room, and I swiftly stepped from behind the plant and followed him into the room before he could shut the door. He said nothing as I silently closed the door behind me. He just stared at the floor, eyes motionless. I followed his gaze and saw what he was looking at. She lay on the carpet in front of the television, my dead wife, staring with internal blankness at the ceiling. Her throat was open and red, a garish, wet wound that reminded me slightly of my sister's stretch marks. I stared at the man now, and we both grinned at the same time. He tilted his head to one side, and I did the same. He wiped his mouth with his fingers, and I did the same. "Awesome," I said, gazing at the body. "No one knows or suspects anything," he said. "No one will ever know it was us. We just cut the body up, dump it down the laundry chute later, and then load her in the boot of the car. And bury her in the woods," I added. He nodded, and I nodded. I looked at him and smiled. I admired him so much. He always thought of everything. He knew how much I hated my family, in particular my wife. He always listened to me when I poured out my problems. He was like me in so many ways, the quiet man. Unnoticed, unheard, underestimated. When we had first gotten to know each other 4 years ago, I'd been amazed at how alike we were. He hadn't wanted to marry Maisie. He'd warned me it would be a disaster, and he'd been right. We had fixed that, though. We smiled together and glanced down at my wife's body. Her nagging words rebounded in my sore head. "Ricky, you're a jerk, you know that? A real jerk. We're here for Larry, and you can't enjoy yourself for an hour, just a fucking hour? And no, you can't have sex, for fuck's sake. Is that all you think about? Disgusting. And anyway, did I tell you it bores me? Did I? You drilling me relentlessly like an old man on Viagra? I can't stand it." The look that had slid onto her face as the quiet man had grabbed the knife had been priceless. I prodded her still, warm body with one foot. Her rolls of fat moved like cold custard. I laughed and wondered if Larry moved like that when he was dead. "You did a good job," I said. "She's fucked for sure now." The quiet man nodded. "She sure is." I wiped my hands on my jeans and then glanced down at them. The blood was still in the lines of my palms. I touched it with one finger and looked at the quiet man. He was silently watching, silently waiting. He was always in the shadows, looking over my shoulder, whispering in my ear, telling me what to do, how to do it, always in my head, day and night. The quiet man was me, and you know what they say, the quiet ones are always the worst. Me and I picked up the saw and bent over the body.